Hello, Namaskar, and welcome back to the channel. So let's start the last chapter of class 11th NCERT book on geography, and the chapter name is Natural Hazards and Disasters. You can see this. Okay, let's start first. This is the chapter 7th chapter, and this is the last chapter. You might have read about tsunami or seen the images of horror on television set immediately after it happened. You may also be aware of the severe earthquake in Kashmir on both sides of the line of control. The damage caused to human life and properties during these episodes has moved us all. What are these as phenomena and how they are caused? How can we shape ourselves? These are some questions which come to our minds. This chapter will attempt to analyze some of these questions. Change is the law of nature. It is a continuous process that goes on uninterruptedly, involving phenomena, big and small, material and non-material, that make our physical and socio-cultural environment. It is a process present everywhere with variations in terms of magnitude, intensity, and scale. Change can be a gradual or slow process like the evolution of landforms and organisms, and it can be as sudden and swift as volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, earthquakes, and lightning, etc. Similarly, it may remain confined to a smaller area occurring within a few seconds like hailstorms, tornadoes, and dust storms. And it can also have global dimensions such as global warming and depletion of the ozone layer. Besides, these changes have different meanings for different people. It depends upon the perspective one takes while trying to understand them. Yes, perspective is very important. From the perspective of nature, changes are value neutral. These are neither good nor bad, but from the human perspective, these are value loaded. There are some changes that are desirable and good, like the changes of season, ripening of fruits, while there are others like earthquakes, floods, and wars that are considered bad and undesirable. Definitely, war is not desirable at all. Observe the environment you live in and prepare a list of changes which take place over a long period of time and those which take place within a short period of time. Do you know why some changes are considered good and others are bad? Prepare a list of changes which you notice in your daily life and give reasons why some of these are considered good and others are bad. In this chapter, we will read about some of these changes which are considered bad and have haunted humankind for a long time. Disasters in general and natural disasters in particular are some such changes that are always disliked and feared by humankind. What is disaster? Disaster is an undesirable occurrence. Yes, very good. Disaster is an undesirable occurrence resulting from forces that are largely outside human control, strikes quickly with little or no warning, which causes or threatens serious disruption of life and property, including death and injury to a large number of people, and requires, therefore, mobilization of efforts in excess of that which are normally provided by statutory emergency services. For a long time, geographical literature viewed disasters as a consequence of natural forces, and human beings are treated as innocent and helpless victims in front of the mighty forces of nature. But natural forces are not the only causes of disasters. Disasters are also caused by some human activities. There are some activities carried by human beings that are directly responsible for disasters. Bhopal gas tragedy, Chernobyl nuclear disasters, wars, release of CFCs, and increase of greenhouse gases. Environmental pollutions like noise, air, water, and soil are some of the disasters which are caused directly by human actions. There are some other activities of human beings that accelerate or intensify disasters indirectly. Landslides and floods due to deforestation, unscientific land use, and construction activities in fragile areas are some of the disasters that are the results of indirect human actions. Can you identify some other human activities going on in and around your neighborhood and schools that can lead to disasters in the near future? Can you suggest some measures to prevent it? It is a common experience that human made disasters have increased both in their numbers and magnitudes over the years, and concerted efforts are on at various levels to prevent and minimize their occurrences. Though the success has been only nominal so far, it is possible to prevent some of these disasters created by human actions. As opposed to this, very little is possible to prevent natural disasters. Therefore, the best way out is to emphasize on natural disaster mitigation and management. Establishment of National Institute of Disaster Management India Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil 1993, and the World Conference on Disaster Management in May 1994 at Yokohama, Japan, etc. are some of the concrete steps towards this direction initiated at different levels. Most often it is observed that scholars use disasters and natural hazards as interchangeable, both are related phenomena, yet quite distinct from each other. Hence, it is necessary to distinguish between the two. Natural hazards are elements of circumstances in the natural environment that have the potential to cause harm to people or property or both. These may be swift or permanent aspects of the respective environmental settings, like currents in the oceans, steep slope and unstable structural features in the Himalayas, or extreme climatic conditions in deserts or glaciated areas. As compared to natural hazards, natural disasters are relatively sudden and cause large scale, widespread death, loss of property, and disturbance to social systems and life over which people have a little or no control. Thus, any event can be classed as disaster when the magnitude of destruction and damage caused by it is very high. Generally, disasters are generalized experiences of people of world over, and no two disasters are similar and comparable to each other. Every disaster is unique in terms of the total socio-environmental factors that control it, the social response it generates, and the way each social group negotiates with it. However, the opinion mentioned above is indicative of three important things. Firstly, the magnitude, intensity, frequency. Magnitude, intensity, frequency, and damages caused by natural disasters have increased over the years. Secondly, there is a growing concern among people the world over to deal with the menace created by these so that the loss of human life and property can be minimized. And finally, significant changes have taken place in the pattern of natural disasters over the years. There has also been a change in the perception of natural disasters and hazard. Previously, hazards and disasters are seen as two closely associated and interrelated phenomena. That is, areas prone to natural hazards were more vulnerable to disasters. Hence, people avoided tampering with the delicate balance that existed in a given ecosystem. People avoided intensification of their activities in such areas, and that is how disasters were less damaging. Technological power has given large capacity to human intervention in nature. Consequently, now human beings tend to intensify their activities into disaster prone areas, increasing their vulnerability to disasters. Colonization of flat plains of most of the rivers and development of large cities and port towns like Mumbai and Chennai along the coast and touching the shore due to high land values make them vulnerable to the occurrence of cyclones, hurricanes, and tsunamis. These observations can also be corroborated by the given data given in table 7.1, showing the magnitude of deaths caused by 12 serious natural disasters in the past 60 years in different countries of the world. It is evident from the table that natural disasters have caused widespread loss of life and property. Concerted efforts are on at various levels to take appropriate measures to deal with the situation. It is also being felt that the damages caused by natural disasters have global repercussions that are beyond the means and capabilities of individual nation states to cope up with. Hence, this issue was raised at the UN General Assembly in 1989, and it was finally formalized at the World Conference on Disaster Management in May 1994 at Yokohama, Japan. This was subsequently called the Yokohama Strategy and Plan of Action for a Safer World. So that is the table 7.1 top 12 natural disasters since 1948. The Soviet Union earthquake, okay, and then China flood, East Pakistan, now Bangladesh tropical cyclone, Iran earthquake, Peru earthquake, East Pakistan tropical cyclones, India tropical cyclone, China earthquake, Iran earthquake, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India tsunami, Pakistan, India earthquakes. Okay, so let's classify the natural disasters. So human beings the world over have experienced disasters, have faced and lived with them. Now people are becoming aware and various steps have been initiated at different levels for mitigating the effects of disasters. Identification and classification of disasters is being considered as an effective and scientific step to deal promptly and efficiently with the disasters. Broadly, natural disasters can be classified under four categories. India is one of those countries which has experienced most of the natural disasters. Every year, it loses thousands of lives and property worth millions of rupees due to these natural calamities. In the following section, some of यहाँ पे देख सकते हो क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स दिया गया है एटमॉस्फेरिक में। तो ये लिस्ट बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है, काफ़ी बार आपको पूछ लिया जाएगा, ऑप्शन दिया जाएगा और बताया जाएगा कि कौन सी एटमॉस्फेरिक डिजास्टर्स नहीं है या फिर कौन सी टेरेस्ट्रियल डिजास्टर है, ऐसे करके सवाल बनता है। तो एटमॉस्फेरिक डिजास्टर के अंदर क्या क्या आता है देखो, ब्लिजर्ड्स, थंडरस्टॉर्म, लाइटनिंग, टॉर्नेडोज, ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन, ड्रॉट। तो जो कन्फ्यूजिंग वाला पॉइंट आपको ये लगता है, ड्रॉट जो है ये एटमॉस्फेरिक डिजास्टर है क्योंकि रेनफॉल, लैक ऑफ रेनफॉल के कारण हो रहा है। हेल स्टॉर्म, देन फ्रॉस्ट, हीट वेव और लू, कोल्ड वेव्स, ये सारे जो है ब्लिजर्ड से लेकर ये सब लू वगैरह सारे एटमॉस्फेरिक डिजास्टर है इंक्लूडिंग ड्रॉट। ओके, नाउ टेरेस्ट्रियल डिजास्टर में आपका आएगा अर्थक्वेक, वॉल्केनिक इरप्शन, लैंडस्लाइड, एवालांचेस, सबसिडेंस एंड सॉइल इरोशन। एक्वाटिक में आएगा फ्लड्स, टाइडल वेव्स, ओशन करंट, स्टॉर्म सर्ज, सुनामी। बायोलॉजिकल में आएगा प्लांट्स एंड एनिमल्स एज कॉलोनाइजर्स, लोकस्ट्स एटसेट्रा। insects infestation, fungal, bacterial and viral diseases such as bird flu, dengue, etc. Biological में plants and animals as colonizers, locusts, etc. Insects infestation, fungal, bacterial and viral diseases such as bird flu, dengue, etc. Yokohama Strategy and International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, Yokohama Strategy and Plan of Action for a Safer World. All the member states of the United Nations and other states met at the World Conference on Natural Disasters Reduction in the city of Yokohama from May 23rd to 27th, 1994. It acknowledged that the impact of natural disasters in terms of human and economic losses has risen in recent years and society in general has become vulnerable to natural disasters. It also accepted that these disasters affected the poor and disadvantaged groups the worst, particularly in the developing countries, which are ill-equipped to cope with them. Hence, the conference adopted the Yokohama Strategy as a guide to rest of the decade and beyond to mitigate the losses due to these disasters. The resolution of the World Conference on Natural Disasters Reduction is as mentioned below. It will note that each country has the sovereign responsibility to protect its citizens from natural disasters. It will give priority attention to the developing countries, particularly the least developed landlocked countries and small island developing states. It will develop and strengthen national capacities and capabilities and where appropriate national legislation for natural and other disaster prevention, mitigation and preparedness, including the mobilization of non-governmental organizations and participation of local communities. It will promote and strengthen sub-regional, regional and international cooperation and activities to prevent, reduce and mitigate natural and other disasters with particular emphasis on human and institutional capacity building and strengthening, technology sharing, the collection, the dissemination and utilization of information and mobilization of resources. It also declared the decade 1990 to 2000 as the International Decade for Natural Disasters Reduction. ओके तो ये अलग से इन्फॉर्मेशन हो गया किसके बारे में, देखो हमने वर्ल्ड कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑन नेचुरल डिजास्टर रिडक्शन के बारे में हमने पढ़ा जो कि योकोहामा सिटी में हुआ था 1994 में। तो बस इतना याद रखो, बाकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है। कि वर्ल्ड कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑन नेचुरल डिजास्टर रिडक्शन कहाँ पर हुआ था? योकोहामा में हुआ था। ये जापान का है, एक सिटी है, और 1994 में हुआ था। ओके, नाउ हम कहाँ पर थे? एक्चुअल लाइन किया था हमारा ये था कि इन द फॉलोइंग सेक्शन सम ऑफ द हाईली डिवास्टेटिंग नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स हैव बीन डिस्कस्ड पर्टिकुलरली इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट। तो एक्चुअल जो टॉपिक है तो यहाँ से आपका स्टार्ट होता है, नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स एंड हैजर्ड्स इन इंडिया। It was discussed in one of the previous chapters that India is vast and diverse in terms of the physical and socio-cultural attributes. It is largely due to its vast geographical area, environmental diversities, and cultural pluralities that scholars often described it using two meaningful adjectives like the Indian subcontinent and the land of unity in diversity. Its vastness in terms of natural attributes combined with its prolonged colonial past, continuing various forms of social discriminations and also equally large population have enhanced its vulnerability to natural disasters. These observations can also be illustrated by focusing on some of the major natural disasters in India. Earthquakes. Earthquakes are by far the most unpredictable and highly destructive of all the natural disasters. You have already learned the causes of earthquakes in your book Fundamentals of Physical Geography. Earthquakes that are of tectonic origin have proved to be the most devastating, and their area of influence is also quite large. These earthquakes result from a series of earth movements brought about a sudden release of energy during the tectonic activities in the earth's crust. यहाँ पर एक बात आपको नोटिस करना है कि earthquakes that are of tectonic origin, मतलब टेक्टोनिक origin के अलावा भी earthquake generate होता है। तो वो कैसे ओरिजिनेट होता है अगर होता है तो? क्योंकि जो स्टेटमेंट है मेरे को तो ऐसा लग रहा है earthquakes that are of tectonic origin, तो फिर और वजह से, और किस किस वजह से earthquake होता है? These earthquakes result from a series of earth movements brought about by a sudden release of energy during the tectonic activity in the earth's crust. As compared to these, the earthquakes associated with volcanic eruption. अच्छा, यहाँ पर बताया जा रहा है कि earthquake और भी किस किस कारण हो सकते हैं? volcanic eruption के कारण हो सकता है, दूसरा रॉक फॉल के कारण हो सकते हैं, लैंडस्लाइड्स के कारण हो सकते हैं, सबसिडेंस के कारण हो सकता है पर्टिकुलरली इन द माइनिंग एरिया, इम्पाउंडिंग ऑफ डैम्स एंड रिजर्वायर्स के कारण हो सकता है, etc. have limited area of influence and the scale of damage. तो ये सारे कारण है अर्थक्वेक्स का। यहाँ पे पता चल गया, अच्छी बात है। It is mentioned in chapter 2 of the book that the Indian plate is moving at a speed of 1 centimeter per year towards the north and northeastern direction, and this movement of plate is being constantly obstructed by the Eurasian plate from the north. As a result of this, both the plates are said to be locked with each other, resulting in accumulation of energy at different points of time. Excessive accumulation of energy results in building up of stress, which ultimately leads to the breaking up of the lock and the sudden release of energy causes. Excessive accumulation of energy results in building up of stress, which ultimately leads to the breaking up of the lock, and the sudden release of energy causes earthquakes along the Himalayan arch. Some of the most vulnerable states are Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttaranchal, Sikkim, and Darjeeling and subdivision of West Bengal. दार्जिलिंग वेस्ट बंगाल में आता है तो उसकी बात कर रहा है। एंड ऑल दी 7 स्टेट्स ऑफ द नॉर्थ ईस्ट। तो ये सारे जो है क्या क्या, जम्मू कश्मीर, हिमाचल प्रदेश, हिमालय के आसपास जो स्टेट हमारे लोकेटेड है वही हिमाचल प्रदेश, उत्तरांचल, सिक्किम, दार्जिलिंग, ये सारे जो है एंड 7 स्टेट्स ऑफ नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया आर earthquake prone. Apart from these regions, the central western parts of India, particularly Gujarat and Maharashtra, have also experienced some severe earthquakes. देखो गुजरात में कब होता है? इन 1819। ओके, तो हम यहाँ पर था कि गुजरात एंड महाराष्ट्र में जो है अर्थक्वेक हुआ था। सेंट्रल वेस्टर्न पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया में है लोकेटेड। गुजरात में देखो कब कब हुआ? 1819 में हुआ था, 1956 में हुआ था एंड 2001 में हुआ था। तो ये यार्ड्स जो है याद रख लेना, कभी कभी ऑप्शन में मैंने देखा था शायद क्वेश्चन, तो इसीलिए मैं बता रहा हूँ, ठीक है, वरना ऐसा नहीं बताऊंगा मैं कभी। तो वहाँ पर था कि कब जो है सीवियर अर्थ को हुआ था, कौन सी ईयर में, तो ये भी सवाल आ जाता है। तो 1819, 1956 एंड 2001। महाराष्ट्र में कब हुआ था देखो, 1967 में एंड 1993 में हुआ था। ओके, तो गुजरात में भूज जो अर्थक्वेक है वो 2001 में हुआ था, तो इसलिए। और डेट भी अगर याद रख पाओ तो सर्च करके याद रख सकते हो, क्योंकि ये बहुत जो है डैमेज किया था, और इसलिए इम्पॉर्टेंट है बहुत, मतलब याद क्या है ना, वो वाली है। Have also experienced some severe earthquakes. Earth scientists have found it difficult to explain the occurrence of earthquakes in one of the oldest, most stable, and mature landmass of peninsular block for a long time. Recently, some earth scientists have come up with a theory of emergence of fault line and energy built up along the fault line represented by the river Bhima, that is Krishna, near Latur and Osmanabad, Maharashtra, and the possible breaking down of the Indian plate. तो इसको हम फिगर 7.2 में एक बार देख लेते हैं क्या बोलना चाहता है। अच्छा, यहाँ पर जोन दिखाया गया है, ठीक है। तो जोन देखो बता रहा है कि सेंट्रल एंड वेस्टर्न पार्ट में हमारा जो अर्थक्वेक हो रहा है उसके रीज़न क्या है कि फॉल्ट लाइन डेवलपमेंट ऑफ फॉल्ट लाइन, ठीक है। क्या पर हमने पढ़ा, तो देखो रिसेंटली सम अर्थ साइंटिस्ट हैव कम अप विद द थ्योरी ऑफ इमर्जेंस ऑफ ए फॉल्ट लाइन। आई होप आपको दिख रहा है लाइन यहाँ पर, देखो इमर्जेंस ऑफ ए फॉल्ट लाइन। तो ये याद रखना कि किस लिए हो रहा है, पेनिनसुलर ब्लॉक में जो एक स्टेबल लैंड मास है वहाँ पर क्यों हो रहा है आपको, एक तो इमर्जेंस ऑफ फॉल्ट लाइन। नेशनल जियोफिजिकल लैबोरेटरी, Geological Survey of India, Department of Meteorology, Government of India, along with the recently formed National Institute of Disaster Management, have made an intensive analysis of more than 1,200 earthquakes that have occurred in India in different years in the past. And based on this, they divided India into the following 5 earthquake zones. Very high damage risk zone, high damage risk zone, moderate damage risk zone, low damage risk zone, very low damage risk zone. अच्छा, तो ये सारे जोन्स में हमारा डिवाइड किया गया है। आउट ऑफ दिस द फर्स्ट 2 जोन्स हैड एक्सपीरियंस सम ऑफ द मोस्ट डिवास्टेटिंग अर्थक्वेक्स इन इंडिया एज शोन इन फिगर 7.2। तो यहाँ पर जो है जोन के साथ दिखाया गया है, आपको मैप दिखा। एरियाज वल्नरेबल टू दिस अर्थक्वेक्स आर द नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न स्टेट्स, एरियाज टू नॉर्थ ऑफ दरभंगा एंड अररिया अलोंग द हिंदू नेपाल बॉर्डर इन बिहार, उत्तरांचल वेस्टर्न हिमाचल प्रदेश around Dharmshala and Kashmir Valley in the Himalayan region, and Kutch, Gujarat. These are included in the very high damage risk zone. तो ये इम्पोर्टेंट है, दो चार नाम आपको पूछा जा सकता है कि ये जो है कौन सी रिस्क जोन में आता है, ठीक है। तो देखो दरभंगा, धर्मशाला, देन कच्छ, ये सब जो है हाई डैमेज रिस्क जोन में आता है। सिमिलरली द रिमेनिंग पार्ट्स ऑफ जम्मू एंड कश्मीर, हिमाचल प्रदेश, नॉर्दर्न पार्ट्स पंजाब, ईस्टर्न पार्ट्स ऑफ हरियाणा, दिल्ली, वेस्टर्न उत्तर प्रदेश एंड नॉर्दर्न बिहार fall under the high damage risk zone. Remaining parts of the country fall under moderate to very low damage risk zone. Most of the areas that can be considered safe are from the stable landmass covered under the Deccan Plateau. Socio-environmental consequences of earthquake. So the idea of an earthquake is often associated with fear and horror due to the scale, magnitude and suddenness at which it spreads disasters on the surface of the earth without discrimination. It becomes a calamity when it strikes the areas of high density of population. It not only damages and destroys the settlements, infrastructure, transport and communication network, industries and other development activities, but also robs the population of their material and socio-cultural gains that they have preserved over generations. It renders them homeless, which puts an extra pressure and stress, particularly on the weak economy of the developing countries. Effects of earthquakes. Earthquakes have all-encompassing disastrous effects on the area of their occurrence. Some of the important ones are listed in table 7.3. Effects of earthquakes on ground, on man-made structures, on water. सो फीचर्स सेटलमेंट्स जो है ऑन ग्राउंड है, लैंडस्लाइड, लिक्विफिकेशन, अर्थ प्रेशर, पॉसिबल चेन इफेक्ट्स on man-made structures, cracking, sliding, overturning, buckling, collapse, possible chain effects, right? Then on water, waves, hydrodynamic pressure, tsunami, possible chain effects. ये possible chain effects मतलब आई थिंक क्या बोलना चाहते हैं, ओके तो इफेक्ट्स ऑफ अर्थक्वेक्स आपको पता ही होंगे। चलो अब चलो यहाँ से इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट कुछ चीज़ें आने वाला नहीं है, लग रहा है तो उतनी इंपॉर्टेंट है नहीं, फिर भी एक बार देख लेते हैं। अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस अर्थक्वेक्स ऑल्सो हैव सम सीरियस एंड फार रीचिंग एनवायरमेंटल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज। सरफेस सिस्मिक वेव्स प्रोड्यूस fissures on the upper layers of the earth's crust, through which water and other volatile materials gush out, inundating the neighboring areas. Earthquakes are also responsible for landslides, and often these cause obstructions in the flow of rivers and channels, resulting in the formation of reservoirs. Sometimes rivers also change their course, causing floods and other calamities in the affected areas. In high earthquake hazard mitigation, unlike other disasters, the damages caused by earthquake are more devastating, since it also destroys most of the transport and communication links. Providing timely relief to the victims becomes difficult. It is not possible to prevent the occurrence of an earthquake. Hence, the next best option is to emphasize on disaster preparedness and mitigation rather than curative measures, such as establishing earthquake monitoring centers, seismological centers for regular monitoring and fast dissemination of information among the people in the vulnerable areas. Use of geographical positioning system can be of great help in monitoring the movement of tectonic plates. Preparing a vulnerability map of the country and dissemination of vulnerability risk information among the people, and educating them about the ways and means minimizing the adverse impacts of disasters. Modifying the house types and building designs in the vulnerable areas, and discouraging construction of high-rise buildings, large industrial establishment, and big urban centers in such areas. Finally, making it mandatory to adopt earthquake resistant designs and use light materials in major construction activities in the vulnerable areas. तो ये सारे जो है मिटिगेशन स्ट्रेटजीज है। अब हम यूपीएससी लेवल के लिए इम्पोर्टेंट होता है कि जब हमारा मेंस का पार्ट आता है तो अभी के लिए हमारा फोकस जो है ही हमारे से एग्ज़ाम है, तो इसके ऊपर क्या है हम पढ़ लिया बस। अच्छा चलो आगे मूव करते हैं। Earthquakes tsunami. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that cause the seafloor to move abruptly, resulting in sudden displacement of ocean water in the form of high vertical waves, are called tsunamis. ओके तो सुनामी जो है अर्थक्वेक के कारण भी हो सकते हैं या फिर वॉल्केनिक इरप्शन के कारण भी सुनामी आ सकता है, ठीक है। एंड और इसको बोलते हैं हार्बर वेव्स और सिस्मिक सी वेव्स। नॉर्मली द सिस्मिक वेव्स कॉज ओनली वन इंस्टेंटेनियस वर्टिकल वेव, बट आफ्टर द इनिशियल डिस्टर्बेंस ए सीरीज ऑफ आफ्टर वेव्स आर क्रिएटेड इन द वाटर दैट ऑसिलेट बिटवीन हाई क्रेस्ट एंड लो ट्रैप इन ऑर्डर टू रेस्टोर द वाटर लेवल। The speed of wave in the ocean depends upon the depth of water. It is more in the shallow water than in the ocean deep. As a result of this, the impact of tsunami is less over the ocean and more near the coast, where they cause large-scale devastations. Therefore, a ship at sea is not much affected by tsunami, and it is difficult to detect a tsunami in the deeper parts of sea. It is so because over deep water, the tsunami has very long wavelength and limited wave height. Thus, a tsunami wave raises the ship only a meter or two, and each rise and fall takes several minutes. As opposed to this, when a tsunami enters shallow water, its wavelength gets reduced and the period remains unchanged, which increases the wave height. Sometimes this height can be up to 15 मीटर और मोर। सो एक सुनामी का जो हाइट होता है 15 मीटर या उससे ज़्यादा होता है, मिनिमम 15 मीटर होना पड़ेगा, which causes large scale destructions along the shores. Thus these are also called shallow water waves. So tsunamis are also known as shallow water waves. Tsunamis are frequently observed along the Pacific Ring of Fire. ये देखो तो पैसिफिक रिंग ऑफ फायर जो है सिर्फ वॉल्केनिक इरप्शन के लिए फेमस, तो इसके लिए इसको नाम पड़ा है, बट एक्चुअली यहाँ पर क्या होता है कि बहुत सारे सुनामीज भी यहाँ पर ऑब्जर्व किया जाता है, पर्टिकुलरली अलोंग द कोस्ट ऑफ अलास्का में, जापान में, फिलीपींस में एंड अदर आइलैंड्स ऑफ साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, इंडोनेशिया, मालयशिया, म्यांमार, श्रीलंका एंड इंडिया में अर्थक्वेक्स सुनामीज देखने के लिए मिलता है। द पैसिफिक रिंग ऑफ फायर याद रखना, ये सिर्फ वल्कानों के लिए फेमस नहीं है बट सुनामीज के लिए भी फेमस है। आफ्टर रीचिंग द कोस्ट The tsunami waves release enormous energy stored in them, and water flows turbulently onto the land, destroying port cities and towns, structures, buildings, and other settlements. Since the coastal areas are densely populated the world over, and these are also centers of intense human activity, the loss of life and property is likely to be much higher by a tsunami as compared to other natural hazards in the coastal areas. The extent of devastation caused by tsunami can be assessed through the visuals on Banda Aceh, Indonesia, presented in the practical work geography. Okay, क्या बोला? The extent of devastation caused by tsunami can be assessed through the visuals on Banda Aceh, Indonesia. पता नहीं यार, ये देखना पड़ेगा इस बुक में क्या है. अब देखो, unlike other natural hazards, the mitigation of hazards created by tsunami is difficult, mainly because of the fact that losses are on a much larger scale. tsunami में बहुत लॉस होता है, तो इट इज़ बियॉन्ड द कैपेसिटी ऑफ इंडिविजुअल स्टेट और गवर्नमेंट टू मिटिगेट द डैमेज. हेंस combined efforts at the international level are the possible ways of dealing with these disasters, as has been in the case of the tsunami that occurred on 26 December 2004, in which more than 3 lakh people lost their lives. India has volunteered to join the international tsunami warning system after the December 2004 tsunami disaster. Okay, the international tsunami warning system, India joined in which year? This can be a good question. In 2004. Okay, or after the December 2004. तो ये बात है. ओके, नाउ नेक्स्ट डिजास्टर पे हम देखते हैं ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन. Tropical cyclones are intense low pressure areas confined to the area lying between 30 degree north and 30 degree south latitudes. In the atmosphere around which high velocity winds blow, horizontally it extends up to 500 to 1000 km and vertically from surface to 12 to 14 km. A tropical cyclone or hurricane is like a heat engine that is energized by the release of latent heat on account of the condensation of moisture that the wind gathers after moving over the oceans and seas. There are differences of opinion among scientists about the exact mechanism of a tropical cyclone. यहाँ पर याद रखने वाली यह बात है, देखो कि इसका जो एक्सटेंट है वो 30 डिग्री नॉर्थ से लेकर 30 डिग्री साउथ तक होता है, और इसका हॉरिजॉन्टल एक्सटेंशन क्या है 500 टू 1000 किलोमीटर तक होता है, और वर्टिकल एक्सटेंशन 12 टू 14 किलोमीटर, यानी ट्रोपोस्फेरिक तक या फिर उससे थोड़ा ज़्यादा, तो 12 टू 14 किलोमीटर तक इसका वर्टिकल लिमिट होता है, और हॉरिजॉन्टल एक्सपेंशन होता है 500 टू 1000 किलोमीटर. ए ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन और हरिकेन इज लाइक ए हीट इंजिन, ये तो हमने पढ़ा. देयर आर डिफरेंसेज ऑफ ओपिनियन अमंग साइंटिस्ट about the mechanism of a tropical cyclone. However, some initial conditions for the emergence of a tropical cyclone are तो ये देखो ये है कि necessary condition for the creation or origin of tropical cyclone. So क्या क्या है? Large and continuous supply of warm and moist air that can release enormous latent heat. Strong Coriolis force that can prevent filling of low pressure at the center. Absence of Coriolis force near the equator prohibits the formation of tropical cyclone between 0 to 5 degree latitude. तो ये एक important information है कि between 0 to 5 degree latitude there is no tropical cyclone, and this is because of the lack of Coriolis force. Because if there is no lack, the air won't get diverted, and the center that we call the eye of the cyclone won't remain a vacuum, and therefore the cyclone won't be created. Unstable condition through the troposphere that creates local disturbances. Okay, तो ये भी important एक क्या है necessary condition है कि unstable condition through the troposphere that creates local disturbances around which a cyclone develops. Finally, absence of strong vertical wind wedge. तो ये एक important information है कि absence of strong vertical wind wedge which disturbs the vertical transport of latent heat. तो vertical wind wedge नहीं रहना चाहिए, यहाँ पर strong vertical wind flow नहीं रहना चाहिए. दूसरा थिंग कि अनस्टेबल कंडीशन चाहिए, और कोरियोलिस फोर्स जो है ज़्यादा होना चाहिए, जितना ज़्यादा होगा उतना अच्छी डेवलप होगा साइक्लोन, और लार्ज एंड कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ वार्म मॉइस्ट वाटर चाहिए, मॉइस्ट एयर चाहिए. ठीक है, दैट कैन रिलीज एनॉर्मस लेटेंट हीट. सो इन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन लेटेंट हीट प्लेज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल. नाउ स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन. Tropical cyclone are characterized by large pressure gradients. The center of the cyclone is mostly a warm and low pressure cloudless core. नोन एज आई ऑफ द स्टॉर्म। ये देखो आज रिसेंटली मैंने इस पर सवाल देखा कि सेंटर को क्या बोलते हैं जहाँ पर लो प्रेशर रहता है। ठीक है, तो ये देखो लो प्रेशर रहता है और बट क्लाउडलेस होता है। लो प्रेशर रहता है लेकिन क्लाउडलेस होता है, तो उसको कोड को हम किस नाम से जानते हैं? आई ऑफ द स्टॉर्म बोलते हैं या फिर आई ऑफ द साइक्लोन बोलते हैं। Generally, the isobars are closely placed to each other, showing high pressure gradients. Normally, it varies between 14 to 17 millibar per 100 kilometer, but sometimes it can be as high as 60 millibar per 100 kilometer. Expansion of the wind belt is about 10 to 150 kilometer from the center. Now, spatio-temporal distribution of tropical cyclone in India. So, owing to its peninsular shape surrounded by the Bay of Bengal in the east and the Arabian Sea in the west, the tropical cyclones in India also originate in these two important locations. Though most of the cyclones originate between 10 to 15 degree north latitudes during the monsoon season, yet in case of the Bay of Bengal, cyclones mostly develop during the months of October and November. Here they originate between 16 degree to 2 degree north latitudes and to the west of 92 degree east. By July, the place of origin of these storms shifts to around 18 degree north latitude and west of 90 degree east near the Sundarban Delta. So the frequency of tracks of this time of cyclonic storms in India. Okay, तो क्या पढ़ा हमने यहाँ पर? दो मोस्ट ऑफ द साइक्लोन्स ओरिजिनेट बिटवीन 10 to 15 डिग्री नॉर्थ लैटिट्यूड्स ड्यूरिंग द मानसून सीजन। देखो ये इंपॉर्टेंट है कि ज़्यादातर जो ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन है 10 to 15 डिग्री नॉर्थ लैटिट्यूड्स में ओरिजिनेट होता है ड्यूरिंग मानसून सीजन होता है। येट इन केस ऑफ बे ऑफ बंगाल साइक्लोन्स मोस्टली डेवलप ड्यूरिंग दी मंथ्स ऑफ अक्टूबर एंड नवंबर। और हमारा यहाँ पर अक्टूबर एंड नवंबर के टाइम पर ज़्यादा साइक्लोन डेवलप होता है। हियर दे ओरिजिनेट बिटवीन एंड यहाँ पर जो ओरिजिनेट बिटवीन 16 to 2 नहीं होगा, आई थिंक 16 to 20 डिग्री नॉर्थ होगा। ठीक है, 16 to 20 डिग्री नॉर्थ होगा लैटिट्यूड्स and to the west of 92 degree east. By July, the place of origin of the storm shifts to around 18 degree north latitude and west of 90 degree east near the Sundarban Delta. Okay. ठीक है, चलो ओके। याद रखना कि 10 to 15 डिग्री के यहाँ पर जो है ज़्यादा होती है और हमारे यहाँ पर अक्टूबर नवंबर मंथ में होता है। इतना काफ़ी होगा आई थिंक। चलो ये कौन सी मैप है? ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन हैजर्ड्स मैप। अच्छा, ये इतनी इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है। हम देखते हैं कि कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज ऑफ ट्रॉपिकल साइक्लोन। देखो, it was mentioned that the energy to the tropical cyclone comes from the latent heat released by the warm moist air. Hence, with the increase in distance from the sea, the force of the cyclone decreases. In India, the force of the cyclone decreases with increase in distance from the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. So, the coastal areas are often struck by severe cyclonic storms with an average velocity of 180 km per hour. Often this results in abnormal rise in the sea level known as storm surge. A surge is generated due to interaction of air, sea and land. The cyclone provides the driving force in the form of very high horizontal pressure gradient and very strong surface winds. The seawater flows across the coast along with strong winds and heavy downpour. This results in inundation of human settlements, agricultural fields, damaging crops, and destruction of structures created by human beings. Floods. You read in newspapers and watch images of floods on television occurring in some regions during rainy seasons. Inundation of land and human settlements by the rise of water in the channels and its spillover presents the condition of flooding. Unlike other natural disasters, the causes of floods are well established. Floods are relatively slow in occurrences and often occur in well-identified regions and within expected time in a year. Floods occur commonly when water in the form of surface runoff exceeds the carrying capacity of the river channels and streams and flows into the neighboring low-lying floodplains. At times, this even goes beyond the capacity of lakes and other inland water bodies in which they flow. Floods can also be caused due to storm surge in the coastal areas, high intensity rainfall for a considerably longer time period, melting of ice and snow, reduction in the infiltration rate, and presence of eroded material in the water due to higher rate of soil erosion. Though floods occur frequently over a wide geographical area, having disastrous ramifications in many parts of the world, floods in the south, southeast, and east Asian countries, particularly China, India, and Bangladesh, are frequent and equally disastrous. Once again, unlike other natural disasters, human beings play an important role in the genesis as well as spread of floods. Indiscriminate deforestation, unscientific agricultural practices, disturbances along the natural drainage channels, and colonization of floodplains and river beds are some of the human activities that play an important role in increasing the intensity, magnitude, and gravity of floods. देखो फ्लड हैजर्ड जोन्स को कितनी अच्छी से यहाँ पर दिखाया गया है। यहाँ पर ये जो मैप्स है ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, जो आपको एटलास में शायद ऐसा नीट एंड क्लीन नहीं मिलेगा। वेरियस स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया फेस हेवी लॉस ऑफ लाइव्स एंड प्रॉपर्टी ड्यू टू रिकरेंट फ्लड्स। राष्ट्रीय बाढ़ आयोग आइडेंटिफाइड 40 मिलियन हेक्टेयर्स ऑफ लैंड एज फ्लड प्रोन इन इंडिया। तो राष्ट्रीय बाढ़ आयोग ये कब एस्टेब्लिश हुआ था, क्या हुआ था, इसके बारे में थोड़ा जानना बनता है, आप सर्च कर सकते हो। तो राष्ट्रीय बाढ़ आयोग क्या बोला है कि 40 मिलियन हेक्टेयर्स ऑफ लैंड जो है वो फ्लड प्रोन है इन इंडिया। अब फिगर हम पहले ही देख लिया कि आसाम, वेस्ट बंगाल एंड बिहार आर अमंग दी हाई फ्लड प्रोन स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया। आसाम, वेस्ट बंगाल और बिहार ये जो है हाई फ्लड प्रोन स्टेट्स है ऑफ इंडिया का, आसाम, वेस्ट बंगाल एंड बिहार। ओके, अपार्ट फ्रॉम दीज मोस्ट ऑफ द रिवर्स इन द नॉर्थर्न स्टेट्स लाइक पंजाब एंड उत्तर प्रदेश आर also vulnerable to occasional floods. It has been noticed that states like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana and Punjab are also getting inundated in recent decades due to flash floods. This is partly because of the pattern of the monsoon and partly because of blocking of most of the streams and river channels by human activities. Sometimes Tamil Nadu experiences flooding during November January due to the retreating monsoon. तो तमिलनाडु में देखो उल्टा होता है, क्योंकि वहाँ पर बारिश विंटर में होता है, तो बाढ़ भी कब आता है, नवंबर टू जनवरी के बीच में तमिलनाडु पे जो है फ्लड आ जाता है। Consequences and control of floods. Frequent inundation of agricultural land and human settlement, particularly in Assam, West Bengal, Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh, coastal areas of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, and Punjab, Rajasthan, northern Gujarat and Haryana have serious consequences on the national economy and society. Floods do not only destroy valuable crops every year, but these also damage physical infrastructure such as roads, rails, bridges, and human settlements. Millions of people are rendered homeless and are also washed down along with their cattle in the floods. Spread of diseases like cholera, gastroenteritis, hepatitis, and other waterborne diseases spread in the flood affected areas. However, floods also make a few positive contributions. Every year, floods deposit fertile silt over agricultural fields, which is good for the crops. Majuli, Assam, the largest riverine island in the world, is the best example of good paddy crops after the annual floods in the Brahmaputra. But these are insignificant benefits, definitely, in comparison to the grave losses. The government of India as well as the state governments are well aware of the menace created by floods every year. How do these governments generally respond to the floods? Construction of flood protection embankments in the flood prone areas, construction of dams, afforestation and discouraging major construction activities in the upper reaches of most of the flood creating rivers, etc. are some steps that need to be taken up on urgent basis. Removal of human encroachment from the river channels and depopulating the flood plains can be the other steps. This is particularly true in western and northern parts of the country which experience flash floods. Cyclone centers may provide relief in coastal areas which are hit by a storm surge. Next, drought. Next type of natural disaster is drought. The term drought is applied to and drought is an atmospheric disaster. Okay, remember this. Is applied to an extended period when there is just shortage of water availability due to inadequate precipitation, excessive rate of evaporation, and overutilization of water from the reservoirs and other storage, including the groundwater. Drought is a complex phenomenon as it involves elements of meteorology like precipitation, evaporation, evapotranspiration, groundwater, soil moisture, storage, and surface runoff, agricultural practices, particularly the types of crops grown, socioeconomic practices, and ecological conditions. Types of droughts. Meteorological drought. It is a situation when there is a prolonged period of inadequate rainfall marked with maldistribution of the same over time and space. Agricultural drought. It is also known as soil moisture drought, characterized by low soil moisture that is necessary to support the crops, thereby resulting in crop failures. Moreover, if an area has more than 30% of its gross cropped area under irrigation, the area is excluded from the drought-prone category. Hydrological drought. It results when the availability of water in different storage and reservoirs like aquifers, lakes, reservoirs, etc. falls below what the precipitation can replenish. इंडिया ड्रॉट प्रोन एरियाज को दिखाया गया, देखो ठीक है। तो वेस्ट बंगाल का सिर्फ इतना पोर्शन है क्या ड्रॉट प्रोन, अच्छी बात है। राजस्थान सबसे ज़्यादा ड्रॉट प्रोन दिखा रहा है आपका, देन गुजरात में भी है, हाँ देखो, देन आपका मिडिल में आता है मॉडरेट, सॉरी सीवियर, तो सीवियर के ऊपर एक्सट्रीम होता है, अच्छा मॉडरेट, सीवियर, और ये सारे जो रीजन है ये ड्रॉट फ्री एरिया है। अच्छा, तो ये कुछ बिहार वगैरह में ड्रॉट नहीं होते। फिर तीस्ता रिफर, ये तो बहुत ड्रॉट कर देते हैं, दार्जिलिंग में कभी कभी ड्रॉट हो जाता है। ओह सॉरी, हमने फ्लड के बारे में सोच रहा हूँ, बट ये तो ड्रॉट की मैप है, सॉरी 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 ओके सॉरी, हाँ फ्लड, सॉरी ये ड्रॉट की बात कर रहे हैं, तो डेफिनेटली ये यहाँ पर बहुत सारे, वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ ना, यहाँ पर बहुत सारे फ्लड होती है, बहुत सारे बारिश होता है, तो यहाँ पर ड्रॉट, हाँ ठीक है। चलो आगे मूव करते हैं, सॉरी कन्फ्यूज हो गया था मैं थोड़ा सा, रियली सॉरी। इकोलॉजिकल ड्रॉट, व्हेन द प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑफ ए नेचुरल इकोसिस्टम फेल्स ड्यू टू शॉर्टेज ऑफ वाटर and as a consequence of ecological distress, damages are induced in the ecosystem. Various parts of India experience these droughts recurrently, which result in some serious socio-economic and ecological problems. ठीक है, चलो कितने टाइप्स के ड्रॉट हमको मिला, इकोलॉजिकल ड्रॉट और हाइड्रोलॉजिकल ड्रॉट, एग्रीकल्चरल ड्रॉट, मेटेरोलॉजिकल ड्रॉट। ओके, ये जो डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ ड्रॉट्स है उसको आप कौन सी कैटेगरी में रखोगे। आई मीन ड्रॉट को तो हमने एटमॉस्फेरिक डिज़ास्टर में पढ़ाए थे, बट ये जो टाइप्स आ गया इसको आप कौन सी कैटेगरी में रखोगे, इसके बारे में आप कमेंट करके बता सकते हो या फिर सोच सकते हो एटलीस्ट। नाउ इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर, सॉरी ड्रॉट प्रोन एरियाज इन इंडिया। इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर हैज़ बीन हेवीली डिपेंडेंट ऑन द मानसून रेनफॉल. Droughts and floods are the two accompanying features of Indian climate. According to some estimates, nearly 19% of the total geographical area of the country and 12% of its total population suffer due to drought every year. About 30% of the country's total area is identified as drought prone, affecting around 50 million people. It is a common experience that while some parts of the country reel under floods, there are regions that face severe drought during the same period. Moreover, it is also a common sight to witness that one region suffers due to floods in one season and experiences drought in the other. This is mainly because of the large-scale variations and unpredictability in the behavior of the monsoon in India. Thus, droughts are widespread and common phenomena in most parts of the country, but these are most recurrent and severe in some and not so in others. On the basis of severity of droughts, India can be divided into the following regions. That is extreme drought affected areas. It is evident from the figure 7.8 that most parts of Rajasthan, particularly areas to the west of the Aravalli Hills, that is Marusthali and Kutch regions of Gujarat, fall in this category. Included here are also the districts like Jaisalmer and Barmar from the Indian desert that receive less than 90 millimeter average annual rainfall. Okay, so it is extreme drought affected areas. Then severe drought prone areas, parts of eastern Rajasthan, most parts of Madhya Pradesh, eastern parts of Maharashtra, interior parts of Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka Plateau, northern parts of interior Tamil Nadu and southern parts of Jharkhand and interior Odisha are included in this category. Now, moderate drought affected area, northern parts of Rajasthan, Haryana, southern district of Uttar Pradesh, the remaining parts of Gujarat, Maharashtra except Konkan, Jharkhand and Coimbatore Plateau of Tamil Nadu, and interior Karnataka are included in this category. The remaining parts of India can be considered either free or less prone to the drought. Now, consequences of drought. Droughts have cascading effects on various other aspects of environment and society. Crop failure leading to scarcity of food grains, akal, fodder, trinkal, inadequate rainfall resulting in shortage of water, jalkal, ये सब तो नहीं पता, and often shortage in all the three, that is trikal, is most devastating. Large scale death of cattle and other animals, but ड्रॉट्स होने से जो जो चीज़ें हो सकता है, तो वाटर के डेफिशिएंसी में सारी चीज़ें जो है हम फंस जाएंगे, मतलब डेथ हो जाएगा कैटल का, अदर एनिमल्स का. माइग्रेशन ऑफ ह्यूमन्स एंड लाइफ स्टॉक आर द मोस्ट कॉमन साइट टू बी सीन इन द ड्रॉट अफेक्टेड एरियाज. Scarcity of water compels people to consume contaminated water, resulting in spread of many waterborne diseases like gastroenteritis, cholera, hepatitis, etc. Droughts have both immediate as well as long-term disastrous consequences on the social and physical environments. Consequently, planning for drought has to take both aspects into consideration. Provision for the distribution of safe drinking water, medicines for the victims, and availability of fodder and water for the cattle, and shifting of the people and their livestock to safer places, etc. are some steps that need to be taken immediately. Identification of groundwater potential in the form of aquifers, transfer of river water from the surplus to the deficit areas, and particularly planning for interlinking of rivers and construction of reservoirs and dams, etc. should be given a serious thought. Remote sensing and satellite imageries can be useful in identifying the possible river basins that can be interlinked and in identifying the groundwater potential. Dissemination of knowledge about drought resistant crops and proper training to practice the same can be some of the long term measures that will be helpful in drought mitigation. Rainwater harvesting can also be an effective method in minimizing the effects of drought. Observe the methods adopted for rooftop rainwater harvesting in your locality. यहाँ पर तो एक भी घर में नहीं है. And suggest measures to make it more effective. But ये ठीक है, चलो लैंडस्लाइड में जाते हैं, हम देखते हैं. So have you ever read about the blocking of roads to Srinagar or disruption of rail services by stones falling on the Konkan railway track? It happens due to landslide, which is the rapid sliding of large mass of bedrocks. Disasters due to landslides are in general far less dramatic than due to earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis and cyclones, but their impact on the natural environment and national economy is in no way less severe. Unlike other disasters that are sudden, unpredictable, and are largely controlled by macro or regional factors, landslides are largely controlled by highly localized factors. Hence, gathering information and monitoring the possibilities of landslides is not only difficult but also immensely cost intensive. It is always difficult to define in a precise statement and generalize the occurrence and behavior of a landslide. However, on the basis of past experiences, frequency, and certain causal relationship with the controlling factors like geology, geomorphic agents, slope, land use, vegetation cover, and human activities, India has been divided into a number of zones. Landslide vulnerability zones, very high vulnerability zone, highly unstable, relatively young mountainous areas in the Himalayas and Andaman and Nicobar, high rainfall regions with steep slopes in the western Ghats and Nilgiris, the northeastern regions along with areas that experience frequent strong ground shaking due to earthquakes, etc., and areas of intense human activities, particularly those related to construction of roads, dams, etc., are included in this zone. High vulnerability zone, areas that have almost similar conditions to those included in the very high vulnerability zone, are also included in this category. The only difference between these two is the combination, intensity, and frequency of the controlling factors. All the Himalayan states and the states from the northeastern regions except the plains of Assam are included in the high vulnerability zones. Moderate to low vulnerability zone, areas that receive less precipitation such as Trans-Himalayan areas of Ladakh and Spiti, Himachal Pradesh, and undulated yet stable deep and low precipitation areas in the Aravalli, rain shadow areas in the western and eastern Ghats and Deccan Plateau also experience occasional landslides. Landslides due to mining and ये जो इमेज आपको दिख रहा है लैंडस्लाइड्स का subsidence are most common in states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Goa, and Kerala. Other areas, the remaining parts of India, particularly states like Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, except district Darjeeling, Assam, except district Karbi Anglong, and coastal region of southern states are safe as far as landslide are concerned. दार्जिलिंग में जो है आपका होता है, ठीक है, कार्बी आंगलोंग में होता है, असम में. Consequences of landslides. So landslides have relatively small and localized area of direct influence, but road block, destruction of railway lines, and channel blocking, rock falls have far-reaching consequences. Diversion of river courses due to landslides can also lead to flood and loss of life and property. It also makes spatial interaction difficult, risky, as well as a costly affair, which in turn adversely affects the development activities in these areas. Then mitigation. It is always advisable to adopt area-specific measures to deal with landslides. Restriction on the construction and other development activities such as roads and dams, limiting agriculture to valleys and areas with moderate slopes, and control on the development of large settlements in the high vulnerability zones should be enforced. This should be supplemented by some positive actions like promoting large-scale afforestation programs and construction of ponds to reduce the flow of water. Terrace farming should be encouraged in the northeastern hill states where zooming, slash and burn, shifting cultivation is still prevalent. Now, disaster management. Disasters due to cyclones, unlike the ones caused by earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, are more predictable in terms of the time and place of their occurrences. Moreover, with the help of development of techniques to monitor the behavior of cyclones, their intensity, direction, and magnitude, it has become possible to manage the cyclonic hazard to some extent. Construction of cyclone shelters, embankments, dikes, reservoirs, and afforestation to reduce the speed of the winds are some of the steps that can help in minimizing the damages. However, increasing the loss of life and property in countries like India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, etc. in successive storms is largely due to high vulnerability of their population residing in the coastal areas. डिज़ास्टर मैनेजमेंट बिल, तो ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है कि डिज़ास्टर मैनेजमेंट बिल कब आया था, 2005 में. The Disaster Management Bill 2005 defines disaster as a catastrophe, mishap, calamity, or grave occurrence affecting any area arising from natural or man-made causes or by accident or negligence, which results in substantial loss of life or human suffering or damage to and destruction of environment and is of such nature or magnitude as to be beyond the coping capacity of the community of the affected area. Conclusion. On the basis of the above discussion, it can be concluded that disasters can be natural or the results of human activity, and all hazards need not turn into disasters since it is difficult to eliminate disasters, particularly natural disasters. Then, the next best option is to mitigate and preparedness. There are three stages involved in disaster mitigation and management. Pre-disaster management involves generating data and information about the disasters, preparing vulnerability zoning maps, and spreading awareness among the people about these. Apart from these, disaster planning, preparedness, and preventive measures are other steps that need to be taken in the vulnerable areas. During disasters, rescue and relief operations such as evacuation, construction of shelters and relief camps, supplying of water, food, clothing, and medical aids, etc., should be done on an emergency basis. Post-disaster operations should involve rehabilitation and recovery of victims. It should also concentrate on capacity building in order to cope up with future disasters, if any. These measures have special significance to a country like India, which has about 2/3 of its geographical area and equal proportion of its population vulnerable to disasters. Introduction of the Disaster Management Bill 2005 and establishment of National Institute of Disaster Management are some examples of the positive steps taken by the Government of India. तो डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट बिल आया 2005 में और उसके बाद हमने नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट को सेटअप किया था. ओके, तो यहाँ पर जो है चैप्टर 7 खत्म होता है और इसी के साथ हमारा जो है 11 का क्लास NCERT बुक भी ख़त्म होता है. और ये देखो अपेंडिक्स वगैरह यहाँ पर दिया हुआ है, आप चाहे तो पढ़ सकते हो. ठीक है, यूनियन टेरिटरी कैपिटल क्या है, पॉपुलेशन. बाय द वे ये जो है पुराना डेटा है, तो आप रिसेंट PDF जो मैं टेलीग्राम पे चैनल पे शेयर कर दूंगा और उसका लिंक आप अबाउट सेक्शन में मिल जाएगा इसी चैनल का. तो तो जाकर देख लेना, या फिर जियोग्राफी नेक्स्ट बोल के सर्च कर लेना तो भी आपको मिल जाएगा टेलीग्राम पे। ओके, यहाँ पर देखिए इंपॉर्टेंट रिवर बेसिन के बारे में दिया गया है, तो ये सारी चीज़ आप पढ़ सकते हो। डेफिनेटली मैं रिसेंट जो PDF है वो अपलोड करूँगा, और एक ही PDF में, जैसे यहाँ पर है ऑल PDFs को कंबाइन करके मैंने एक ही PDF में कर दिया है, वो अपलोड कर दूंगा। तो आप जो चैनल को ज़रूर ज्वाइन हो जाएगा। अगर मन करे तो छोड़ देना, कोई बात नहीं, बट PDF वहाँ से आपको मिल जाएगा। द नेशनल पार्क्स ऑफ इंडिया यहाँ पर लिस्ट दिया गया है। डेफिनेटली इसको आप गूगल से पढ़ोगे तो अपडेटेड चीज़ें मिलेगा, ठीक है। तो यही चीज़ें हैं। उसके बाद ग्लॉसरी है, ये किसी काम का नहीं है। चलो, तो यहाँ पर जो है क्लास NCERT 11 बुक ख़त्म होता है। थैंक यू फ्रेंड्स। हम नेक्स्ट बुक को स्टडी करेंगे जो कि ह्यूमन जियोग्राफी के ऊपर होगा, और आई थिंक वो 12 का होगा, ठीक है, क्लास 12 का होगा। जो भी है हम नेक्स्ट वीडियो में देखेंगे। चलिए आज यहीं पे रखते हैं। थैंक यू।